I discovered a haunted spot on the Appalachian Trail, and the whispers never stopped. I never should have opened that door. The chill caught me off guard, like icy fingers creeping up my spine. I was just hiking, enjoying the crisp air and the crunch of leaves under my boots. The sun streamed through the trees, warming my skin. But everything changed the moment I stumbled upon that old cabin. Its windows were dark, shadowy, like empty eyes staring right through me. A thick fog rolled in, clinging to my legs, wrapping around me like a shroud. The air felt heavy, pregnant with secrets. As I stepped closer, I felt the wood groan beneath my touch. The door hung ajar, creaking ominously with the slightest push. Inside, the scent of dampness and decay hit me like a brick. It was suffocating. I hesitated, my heart pounding. Every instinct screamed for me to turn back. But curiosity pulled me in. The room was draped in shadows. Dark corners seemed to breathe, shifting and swirling in the dim light. I could almost hear the walls whispering, dull thuds echoing in the silence. My pulse raced. Just look around, I told myself. But, God, what was I thinking? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the cabin. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. What was that? I strained to hear. There it was again, a low whisper, as if someone was calling me. My skin prickled. It wasn't a voice I recognized, but it felt familiar. Like a memory tugging at the edges of my mind, I stepped back, nearly tripping over a crooked floorboard. Panic surged through me, flooding my senses. I should have left, should have turned away and never looked back. But my feet betrayed me. They carried me deeper into the shadows. The darkness thickened, wrapping around me, swallowing me whole. I could see nothing but outlines, ghostly shapes dancing just beyond my vision. My heart raced faster. I could hear my own breaths, shallow and quick. I stood in the silence. It pulsed, thick and heavy. Something was there, lurking just beyond reach. A sharp whisper coiled around me. I could almost make out words, secrets long buried. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. Get out, I thought. Just leave. But I was rooted to the spot, trapped in a maze of terror. And just as I felt an unnatural cold seep into my bones, I saw it. A figure, standing near the shattered window, cloaked in shadows. My breath hitched. I couldn't move. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The figment shifted, mist swirling around it. Everything froze. I was paralyzed, caught in this moment of dread, staring down the abyss of the unknown. Then the door slammed shut behind me, echoing like thunder. Darkness enveloped me. I was no longer alone. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air thickened, heavy with a dampness that felt almost sentient, as if the shadows themselves had come alive around me. I staggered back toward the door, but it stood firm, a wall of oppression against my desperate bid for escape. Silence stretched out, endless and suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic thudding of my heart, each pulse a frantic message to my frozen limbs. As I turned back toward the figure, I was met not with horror but a pair of piercing eyes, glowing faintly in the darkness like the embers of a long-dead fire. They were not human. They couldn't be. A chill clawed at my skin, and I fought the overwhelming urge to flee, to scream, to tear open that door behind me. Instead, I stood paralyzed, the whispers around me growing louder, weaving into a tapestry of sorrow and agony. Help me, they pleaded, rising in a crescendo that felt like fingers curling around my throat. The voice echoed in my mind, familiar, and yet foreign as it merged with the shadows, forming a chorus of tormented souls clamoring for release. I closed my eyes tightly, clawing at the memories that twisted in my head like chaotic vines. I could feel their desperation and sadness, and it began to envelop me like a shroud. "Why are you here?" A voice emerged with startling clarity, distinct from the others, as if it were taking shape in the very air I breathed. I opened my eyes to find the figure had moved closer, its form shifting unnaturally, like smoke caught on an unseen breeze. I could see the outline of a man, dressed in clothes from an era long past, faded flannel and dusty boots. His face obscured by shadows, but the weight of his sorrow palpable. I stammered, my voice a mere whisper. "You should not have come," he boomed suddenly, the walls trembling with his rage. "This is not a place for the living." In response, the whispers morphed, layering over one another like a raging storm. The chaos erupted, cries of agony blending with desperate wails. It felt like they were all turning towards me, seeking an audience for their torment. I clamped my hands over my ears, begging for silence, for anything to drown out the cacophony. But my pleas went unheard. The figure stepped forward, breaking through the mist that filled the cabin. In the flickering light, I caught a glimpse of his face. It was twisted, eyes empty and unforgiving, a grotesque mockery of humanity. Fear coiled tightly in my gut, revulsion bubbling up to meet the horror. "What do you want from me?" I gasped, desperate tears spilling down my cheeks. "To remember Tio suffer," he hissed. The echo of his voice erupted in my mind, vibrating against the very fibers of my being. I felt my throat constricting around the sorrow twisting within me, the realization that here, in this ancient cabin, history had woven itself into the very wood and nail, a tapestry of despair to be unleashed upon the unwary. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and my breath fogged in front of me. I could see my own terror reflected in the figure's eyes, but before I could draw another breath, the mist filled the room, hardening into shapes I could barely comprehend, twisted faces, reaching hands. They were no longer whispers. They were a chorus of lost souls, now screaming in unison. Then, as if in a cruel game, the figure raised a hand, fingers outstretched toward me. "Join us," my heart raced, but my feet remained rooted, caught in the grasp of a profound torment that threatened to drown me. There was no escape, not now. I could feel the walls closing in, the shadows dancing, consuming everything in their path. And then I heard it, a deep, resonant growl that reverberated through the earth beneath me, shaking the very foundation of the cabin. The walls began to moan, like a beast awakening from a long slumber. I realized with dawning horror that I was no longer just an observer. I was part of this nightmare. Panic surged in my chest like liquid fire, but my feet would not move, my muscles refusing to respond to the primal urge to survive. I was utterly ensnared, as the shadows lunged, clawing towards me with their grasping hands. The last words of the man echoed in my ears, a sinister whisper wrapping around my heart. "You will never leave." The ground trembled violently beneath me, and I plunged into darkness, all sense of direction slipping away. I could hear them now, the voices merging into a singular, horrifying chant. "Stay, stay, stay." Everything was gone, the mountains, the trees, my very existence replaced by an all-consuming void. And just as I felt the first icy grip of despair close around my throat, the whispers stopped. In that silence I understood too late that the horror had truly begun. The darkness was absolute, a suffocating weight pressing in from all sides. I could no longer hear my own breath. It was as if the void had swallowed even the sound of my existence. My heart raced, but in the suffocating silence, the rhythm seemed to echo back at me from the depths: thud, 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 like a warning bell tolling for the damned. Slowly, the shadows began to shift again, twisting and curling as if drawing life from the very essence of fear that coursed through my veins. I felt the chill creeping along my skin, a creeping sensation that promised death, and yet something deeper, a dark invitation to embrace the horror that enveloped me. The air quivered with a static charge, and a low hum filled the void, vibrating against the walls of my mind. "Remember," a voice, fragile and feeble like fragile glass, whispered close enough to make the hairs on my arms stand on end. "You must remember." A flicker of light pierced the suffocating darkness, illuminating a faded memory. The cabin walls, once weathered and worn, now glistened like silver under the moonlight. Phantom figures flitted among the shadows, their forms almost recognizable yet distorted, caught in an eternal dance of anguish, as if replaying the moment of their greatest torment. I squinted, straining to catch a single word, a single cry, anything to anchor me to reality. Instead, I was met with the same piercing eyes from before, now flaming with an unholy light as the figures began to turn toward me. "Join us," they murmured in a haunting harmony, a chorus of the lost entwined in a sinister lullaby that dripped with agony. "No," I screamed, my voice raw and desperate, but it was swallowed by the consuming darkness around me. The flickering light pulsed again, and suddenly I was no longer in the grasp of the void. I was back inside the cabin, crammed full of memories I had once believed forgotten. A sensation washed over me, a raw, visceral dread like poison flooding my system. I stumbled forward, attempting to grasp a thin slice of reason, but the air thickened, wrapping around me like a noose. The soft whispers of shadows grew louder, practically raucous with glee, as if they delighted in my confusion. Then, from the corner of my eye, a figure emerged, tall and emaciated, with grotesquely elongated limbs that jerked unnaturally. Its face was hidden behind a veil of matted hair, but I could feel the intent behind those hidden eyes, boring into my soul. Electricity crackled around the room as it let out a low growl, resonating in my bones. "No more," I stammered, instinctively backing against the wall. "Please remember your sins, child." The words slithered out from the figure, cold and damp like the kiss of death. Suddenly, all at once, the room lit with disquieting clarity. The whispers coiled around me, revealing their secret shadows of my past, forsaken dreams that twisted into nightmares. I could see the lost things. My childhood home, the faces of people long gone, each moment steeped in regret, fists of grief clenched tight around my heart. And then came a flash, moments when I had chosen indifference over kindness, words unsaid, hands left unheld. Each recollection pierced through the fog like shards of glass, cutting, bleeding, gushing remorse. The pain was unbearable, tearing a rift in my essence that exposed the very core of my being to the phantoms that danced around me. From somewhere deep within the recesses of my mind, one voice rose above the cacophony, a childish voice. "Help me, please." The words slipped through the cracks of my memories, raw and wrenching, pulling at me with desperate urgency. "Why have you come here?" I shouted, the cabin shaking with my fury, sweat pouring from my brow like rain. But the shadows only circled closer, reveling in my torment. "Remember, and you'll understand," they chimed, an unsettling melody that resonated in my heart, refusing to let go. Suddenly, the ground quaked violently again, and a blinding light erupted from beneath the floorboards, engulfing me in a searing storm of energy. I was thrown backward, hitting the old wooden table that splintered beneath me. The world spun in dizzying spirals. I felt the warm blood trickle down my scalp as the darkness beckoned, promising an escape from the relentless whispers. But then, something else, an immense shadow leaping forth from the light, growing larger. Its shape was distinctly human, but forever transformed. Twisted fingers reached for me, elongated and clawed, arcing like lightning. "Join us, child of the living," it boomed, a cacophony of anguished souls roaring in unison. And in that harrowing moment, as reality fractured once and for all, I understood this was a trial, a reckoning of the choices I had made, each moment leading to this final, dreadful confrontation. And as darkness began to consume me once more, I felt the familiar tug at my consciousness, pleading, urging me to return to the memories of before. But what would I sacrifice to escape? As my scream shattered the silence, the shadows lunged. I realized, too late, the horrifying truth. I was never meant to leave. Then, in the darkest corner of the cabin, the echoes of my childhood laughter morphed into cackles of disdain, the walls of confinement twisting like a waking nightmare. And in the fray, a final whisper slipped through the chaos. "You will forget, but I will always remember." The air was thick with decay, a rancid miasma that soaked into the very fibers of my being as I lay there, encased in darkness. I felt hollow, as if I'd become a vessel for the very horrors that surrounded me. A conduit through which past anguish seeped, roiling like a beast ready to pounce. My shattered table was now merely a splintered barrier between me and what loomed in the shadows, but even that no longer provided comfort as I struggled to collect my thoughts. Fragments of memories dipped and swirled, provoking the sickening sensation of being observed, not just watched but hunted. My gaze flicked across the dimly lit cabin, where the shadows swirled and twisted with a life of their own. They seemed to take pleasure in my suffering, mocking my attempts to regain composure as they whispered secrets born from a time long buried. "Don't you want to remember?" they hissed, voices intertwining like black vines around my heart, squeezing, clawing for escape. "We have so much to show you." With a newfound certainty, I pushed myself off the crumbling floor, my limbs unsteady, swaying like an abandoned puppet. The soft glow from the fractured boards pulsed rhythmically beneath my feet, like a heartbeat urging me toward a truth I wasn't ready to confront. But as I stepped away from the remnants of my wrecked sanctuary, the urge to flee battled fiercely with a relentless thread of curiosity. "Help me," the childish voice echoed again, a fragile plea yearning for salvation, scraping raw against the walls of my mind. It intertwined with the shadows, their dance intensifying as I broke into a hurried walk, desperate to lose myself within the unknown. I stumbled toward a doorway, long since reclaimed by the encroaching woodlands outside. Even as nature's beauty lurked just beyond, the sight of the dark forest sent a chill that wove through my chest, igniting the instinctual need to run. Still drawn by that haunting call, I stepped out into the cool night air. The forest enveloped me like a shroud, each breath laced with the smell of earth and something else I couldn't quite name it, but it seeped rich, heavy, and smoky into my senses. Ashen shapes danced in the periphery, shadows that clung to the rotting trunks of the trees, whispering secrets through the rustling leaves. With every timid step deeper into the wilderness, my pulse quickened, resonance vibrating in my throat. "Find her," the whispers urged like a twisted anthem. "Dig deeper. Uncover what lies beneath. Remember." I hesitated, caught like a moth drawn to a flame, but my feet pressed forward, spurred on by a desperation I could not fully understand. A small clearing opened before me. Pale moonlight fell through the treetops, illuminating an ancient stone well nestled among thickets of dense foliage. With a sense of dread tightening my throat, I approached, feeling what could only be described as a magnetic pull. Peering down into the abyss of the well, I caught a glimpse of something moving just beyond sight at the bottom. A flicker of fabric, a small hand reaching out, grasping at ancient stones as if trying to escape the darkness that clutched at it. Heart racing, I sank to my knees. "Help me," the voice cried, clear and desperate. "Please don't leave me," I gasped, the childish face flashing in my mind yet remaining frustratingly elusive, a mirage slipping through my fingers. "I'm here. I'm coming," I yelled, panic rising in my chest like bile. Without thinking, I pulled off my belt, looping it around a makeshift anchor as I prepared to descend into the well's stony maw. "No," came a chorus of voices, now behind me, thick with malice, a cacophony surging like a tide of darkness. "You must not touch that which lies below." I froze as chilling fingers grazed my spine. I turned, breath catching in my throat, only to confront a wall of shadow figures emerging from the trees, twisted faces contorted in grief and rage. Their hollow eyes fixated on me as they surged forward, a tide of despair bent on consuming. "No, no, no." My heart thundered as I stumbled back, retreating toward the well. Loomed behind me, almost beckoning, a desperate sanctuary, a threshold between this world and the next. But before I could retreat into the cavern, the atmosphere erupted into chaos as one of the figures lunged forward, grasping my arm with an iron grip. It was close enough for me to see the contorted face, a visage lost to time, mouth twisted in a silent scream that pierced the air, sending a shockwave of terror spiraling through me. And then the well shrieked an echo of sirens from deep within. "Help me!" The child screamed again, louder now, as if calling from the very bottom of despair, and in that moment, I felt the split of reality unraveling around me. Finally, as it consumed me, The walls of time and memory crashed together, a cacophony uniting shadows past and present. The intense energy shot through me, blinding and everlasting, filling my senses as I collapsed. And just like that, it faded, leaving me teetering on the edge of understanding or insanity as the well's haunting call echoed back at me, chillingly familiar. "Help me," it whispered, and the cacophony of shadows joined in, purring in delight, each voice merging into one indefinite echo of despair. I blinked, gazing deep into that newly formed darkness, realizing too late that the voices had turned inward. What have I done? But I couldn't answer, because in that dismal moment surrounded by phantoms, I felt the chilling awareness that some memories were not meant to be confronted. They simply wanted to be forgotten, and in losing that choice, I'd opened a door that must now be reckoned with. Then, deep within the well, an anguished wail pierced the air, deeper, darker than all the others. "Now you will remember." Stumbling backward, the air rippled around me in disorientation, my heart racing at the relentless wail that surged from the depths of the well. I felt ensnared by threads of a past that wasn't my own, a memory I dared not touch. The phantoms skirting along the tree line were now pulling back, but their gaze remained locked on me, hunters waiting for their moment to strike. "No, not her," one shadow murmured lowly. "You must remember him. His guilt shall wash over you. This is no innocent cry. This is a summoning." My pulse drummed loudly in my ears, drowning out their whispers, but the weight of dread coiled around me tighter. I shook my head, willing away the anguish. I focused on the child's call, that hopeless plea clawing at the edges of my sanity. "I can't leave you," I murmured, a desperate anchor to hold me steady against the vortex of despair. But as the wails crescendoed, a new sound pierced the cacophony. A low, rumbling growl resonated from the depths. The well itself echoed with life, the stones trembling beneath my fingertips as I cautiously laid my hand upon the jagged edge. The darkness seemed to swell and then retract, as if breathing, searching for a way to escape. I peeled my eyes away, unwilling to give in to the intoxicating pull of that abyss. Perhaps there was still a way to flee, to return to the sanctuary of the cabin. But even as I turned to run, I felt the shadows latching onto me, curling around my ankles like serpents. Leave her to the well," they shrieked in unison, combining voices into a dreadful symphony that echoed through the trees. "She does not belong to you." Spurred by their frantic cries, I began to stumble away, but a sudden pain shot through my chest, a tightness that robbed me of breath. As I fell to my knees, I looked back towards the well. The shadows had gathered there, swirling at its mouth like a dark whirlpool, and in that moment, I sensed something even deeper hiding inside the child, and something else, something waiting with a hunger that chilled my very bones. "No," I shouted against the grief-laden whispers. "I'm not leaving you." I struggled to my feet and lunged toward the edge of the well, desperate fingers reaching down, hoping to reach that small hand that seemed to strain against unseen constraints. "Hold on, I'm coming." A sharp gasp broke the air, the sound not of despair, but of ecstatic recognition. From within the undulating blackness, a face began to emerge, another child. This one, hollow and sickly, faced me with sunken eyes and a haunting grin that should not have belonged to someone so young. It hovered just beyond the brink of the shadows, as the other child sunk deeper, fingers clawing against rocky despair. "Give in," the apparition hissed, its voice a sickly sweet cadence that sent the hairs on my arms standing at attention. "You cannot save her. She is ours now, a thrall forever lost to the well. Get back." I flailed in terror, stumbling and losing my balance. I watched helplessly as the first childish cries transformed into something ghastly, an obscured chorus mingling with laughter, rising into the suffocating atmosphere until the ground beneath me started to shift. Suddenly, roots coiled about my feet like frostbitten serpents. I felt the earth recoil, pulling at me, dragging me toward the very maw of the well. A sudden burst of strength surged through me, a primal instinct pushing me to kick at the earth. But the shadows invaded me, whispering thoughts of my own buried guilt. "You have opened the door. Now claim what you sought to forget." They mocked, their echoing laughter rumbling through the clearing, ripping through the remnants of my mind. "Shut up!" I screamed, clawing at the earth as the whispers clawed at my sanity. But the weight of their memories pressed down harder, like stones are sinking into the abyss, and I cried out as an unyielding force began to grip my arm. The shadows pulled tighter, swirling around me like cold tendrils of smoke, and then, abruptly, all fell silent. The echoes transformed into a deceptive stillness, pressing against my chest, blocking out reason. I held my breath, desperate for clarity. Slowly, the childish voice returned, softer now, carried on the breeze that stole through the trees. "Help me," but as my resolve wavered, the abyss inside the well opened wider, revealing something sinister, a reflection not of the child, but of me myself trapped within that same spectral dance, eyes wide with horror, and I realized the truth that pulsed through my veins. I was not here to save them. I was here to join them. "No!" I screamed in defiance, wrenching my body from the violent grasp and diving away. But as I landed in the cool dirt, a hollow laugh wove around me, and then the howling returned, a diabolical shriek that echoed across the night, a warning that bore down with renewed fury. "You can't escape what has always been part of you." As the shadows surged again, I spun to face the well, and to my horror, I saw not just a childish hand reaching for freedom, but dozens, thousands of hands clawing, grasping, begging to be freed from a darkness that had never ceased to consume them. "Now you know," they sang, their voices entwined within the night as I was dragged closer, inch by inch, to the threshold of their world. "Help me!" The plaintive call echoed one last time before a snap, as something unseen broke within me, and abruptly, an aching silence fell once more, an abyss opening wide, threatening to devour all remnants of light. In that moment, I understood the chilling question buried in deep dark shadows. "Will you be one of us?" As the void called my name, I realized the answer would shape my fate forever. The suffocating silence was shattered as a heavy thud vibrated from the ground beneath me, a tremor that sent ripples through the air. I was panting, desperation clawing at my throat, and yet an eerie calm washed over the clearing, wrapping around me like a shroud. The cries of the lost souls faded to a low murmur, replaced by a single sound, a voice that seemed to rise from the very stones of the well, licking my ears with its bitter saltiness. "Don't you want to play?" A chill ran through me, deep and penetrating, igniting all the horrors that swirled in the vestiges of my mind. I felt the weight of unseen eyes, surveying me, judging me as if the shadows had formed an audience to my disgrace. I scrambled backwards, limbs trembling as the copse of trees surrounding the well seemed to warp, their gnarled branches twisting like the fingers of the damned. "What do you want?" I answered, forcing my throat to unstick itself from the fear that held it captive. My voice came out weak, devoid of the power I needed. The only response was a low hissing laughter, reverberating from the very air, and I felt the contours of the darkness shifting as it pulled tighter, drawing me toward the edge like a maelstrom. As I steadied myself and took a desperate breath, the biting chill tangled with the dampness of the ground, intertwining with my fear. "Please," I whispered, almost to myself, a denomination of hope I hardly believed could exist anymore. "Let me go." "Let you go?" The laugh increased in pitch and turned cruel, ricocheting off the trees and stones, muting the rustling leaves that had once felt alive. "But you see, you've already come too far. The door has opened, and now we play by our rules." "What rules?" I wanted to scream, but the question crucified itself inside my chest. Calculating eyes glimmered from the tangled shadows. I could sense that anticipation danced in their depths. Without warning, the shadows surged forth like ink spilled over canvas, enveloping me in darkness. Instinct propelled me forward, into the trees where I could feel the shifting weight of branches above me. But even among the dense underbrush, I could hear the distorted echoes of the wailing souls from the well, now sharpened into shrieks, as if they were aware of my every move. The whispering dark followed, coiling around me, desperate to ensnare me once more. "You cannot escape your past. You will face it or be swallowed whole." Suddenly, I tripped over a root that seemed to jerk back, and the ground clung to my limbs, a thick mass of earth and decay pulling me down. Panic ignited within me, and I fought against the encroaching shadow, clawing and flailing. But the darkness would not let me go. It caressed my thoughts, feeding on my fears, intertwining itself with every memory I wished to forget. Why did you come here? The voice wailed, soft and accusing, weighing thick in the air. Did you not know the stories? How we have waited for someone like you. Images flickered across my mind, fragments of a life lost in regrets. The faces of familiar people layered with grief and sorrow. I struggled harder, feeling the cold tendrils tighten around my chest. But my resolve echoed hollow against their torment. Let them go, I shouted into the spiraling void within the woods. But then I caught a glimpse of something, a flash of pale skin against the treacherous darkness. And I froze. It was the child, her face now twisted and unrecognizable, tormented and etched with despair. The edges of her form rippled like water, dissolving into the shadows, and I realized she was not alone. A chorus swelled around me, an unholy celebration of suffering and despair. From the darkness emerged flitting shapes, twisting figures that drew nearer. Ghostly apparitions of children, captive souls chained by past transgressions. Their mouths stretched into horrid smiles, taunting me with the truth of my own sins. You are one of us now. Come play, they chorused, the harmonies blending into a sorrowful melody that echoed through me, each note striking like icy daggers. Then the world shifted again, the ground shaking violently as the well stones trembled, ribs of the earth failing beneath the weight of the truth. I stumbled, half-dragged toward the abyss, feeling the tether of my last semblance of sanity pull taut as the shadows tightened their hold. Let go of her, a voice thundered, ringing like a bell striking through the chaos. I looked up, my heart leaped as I caught sight of a figure in the distance, a beacon of shimmering light pushing against the darkness, the only essence of hope in this living nightmare. But before I could call out, the shadows rushed forward, drowning out the light, pulling me into the well-less, opening my body, awakening to a howl that could only belong to the bottomless abyss. I was lost, falling into a chasm that mirrored my own despair, knowing full well that whatever awaited me at the bottom would not be just darkness. As the light dwindled above, the finality of their laughter resounded, echoing through the depths, you'll never escape us. And with that, the world exploded in blinding darkness, and I was swallowed whole. I didn't know if I would find my way back, but I could feel it. A sinister promise was woven into the air, coiling around me like a serpent, ready to strike. Remember who you are and what you've done. The nothingness roared as it engulfed me, an all-consuming void that seemed to stretch endlessly into an ocean of despair. I was weightless, suspended in a world without sound or light, my thoughts swirling in chaotic patterns, frayed at the edges like an old, moth-eaten tapestry. The sensation was familiar, reminiscent of the past. It pressed against my psyche, dredging up memories I had buried deep within the recesses of my mind. Just as I began to acclimate to the suffocating nothingness, the descent halted with a jarring thud. I tumbled forward, a disoriented creature thrown into a new reality that smelled of damp earth and decay. Gasping for breath, I pushed myself up, my fingers sinking into the cool, moist ground, bordered by a moat of old roots and detritus that clawed at my skin like long-lost friends of the damned. I stood, trembling, surveying my surroundings. Pale, ghostly lanterns flickered around me, illuminating the shapes of gravestones carved from ancient stone, an ominous graveyard cloaked in mist. The air was thick with the stench of rot and something else, an acerbic tang that bit at my throat and filled my mind with dread. My heart thrummed painfully in my chest as I staggered forward, brushing against the moss-slick headstones, their names worn and forgotten. It felt like stepping into a realm that had been abandoned by time, a reflection of my own crumbling memories. It was then that I felt it quivering at the base of my spine, the prickling awareness of eyes watching. My breathing quickened, and shadows shifted with sinister intent, whispering taunts I could not hear but could certainly feel. I blinked against the encroaching darkness and recognized that the glimmers around me were not mere lights, but trails of flickering souls, tethered to their resting places, their sorrow imbuing the air with a tangible weight. Your sins are etched upon the very ground you tread, echoed a voice that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. You cannot escape them. I willed my feet to carry me out, desperate to slip back into the placidity of the forest beyond. But the ground trembled as the voice snickered. Where do you think you're going? The game has just begun. Suddenly, an avalanche of whispers rose around me, swirling into a tempest that felt almost sentient. They filled the air with breathless urgency, transforming sorrow into a tangible force that pulled at my skin. I turned and ran, back past gravestones that began to lean, almost as if they were stretching to reach me. Their surfaces trembling with the force of 1,000 unanswered questions, branches clawed overhead, their silhouettes snapping like fingers eager to catch me again, and the whispers transformed into wails, a cacophony of forgotten names culminating in a single guttural scream that seared through me, leaving a trail of ice. Remember who you left behind. The words slashed into my mind, and I stumbled, gripped by an unbearable pain as images surfaced, memories I thought I had locked away for good. I saw her, the child I had abandoned, her wide, haunted eyes that mirrored my own anguish, filled with a heartbreak too profound to acknowledge. My breath quickened as her frail form seemed to weave through the shadows, beckoning like a specter. Find me, she pleaded, the sound echoing like thunder across the graveyard, resonating between the stones that bore witness to the unfathomable weight of grief. No, I screamed, clawing at the ground. All at once, the shadows surged closer, wrapping around me, each tendril whispering secrets of betrayal and guilt, insinuating themselves beneath my skin. I could feel the damp breath of the lost souls on my neck, ready to claim me as one of their own, dragging me into the abyss of anguish I had tried so hard to flee. The light flickered again, a desperate flicker amidst the encroaching darkness, and I bolted towards it, desperate to escape, desperate to save myself. But the shadows lunged for me, dragging on my limbs, anchoring me to the ground. Stay with us, they cried, their voices a chorus of regret and despair. I end that moment of paralyzing clarity. I realized that every step I had taken had led me to this godforsaken place, the crucible of my own damned soul. It was not enough to run. I needed to face the horror of my own making, the child whose echo reverberated through time and space, reaching out from the recesses of my heart. Suddenly, the lanterns around me extinguished one by one, plunging the world into a thick darkness, and I felt myself being pulled back, pulled into the memory of her anguished cries, into the terrible choices I had made as the shadows tightened around me. I glimpsed the outline of her face amidst the spectral haze. You can't hide from me, she whispered, her voice both a caress and a blade. You will find your way back to me, or I will drag you into the depths of despair forever. And then, just as the last flicker of hope flickered out, I felt the ground slip away beneath me once more, plunging into an abyss deeper than the last, a final echo of laughter trailing after me, chilling me to the core. Welcome back to the game. We've been waiting. The plummet seemed eternal, an endless tangle of limbs and shadows wrapping around me as I fell deeper into that yawning void. The laughter echoed off the walls of my mind, morphing into guttural cries that reverberated through my entire being. It wasn't just an echo. It was a memory, a remembrance of the girl's visage twisted with anguish, her eyes wide, pleading for deliverance. When I finally hit the ground, the impact was soft, too soft, like landing in a grave of feathers. I lay there, weightless yet suffocated, my body unwilling to move. The darkness pressed in like a heavy blanket, an all-consuming force that cradled me against its chest. An unsettling stillness replaced the chaos, and I dared to open my eyes. This time, I found myself in a narrow passage, the walls lined with stones that pulsated and throbbed like living flesh, slick with an ichor that dripped incessantly onto the damp ground, echoing like a heartbeat. The smell of rot intensified, intermingling with an inexplicable metallic scent that made bile rise in my throat. Is anyone there? I croaked, the sound swallowed by the constricting shadows wrapping around my throat. Welcome back, a whisper twined through the air, curling around my ear like smoke. You thought you could escape? Our games are eternal. A figure flickered in the periphery of my vision, a familiar silhouette, twisting and writhing in the gloom. Heart racing, I turned, desperate to confront the fleeting image. A pale woman stood there, her skin shimmering in the darkness like the surface of a lake at midnight. Her hair hung long and loose, cascading around her shoulders. But her eyes, they were black holes, sucking the light from the world around her. Who are you? I gasped, struggling against the unyielding shadows that confined me. Instinct screamed for me to flee, but my legs felt rooted to the ground, as if the stone was alive, snarling, keeping me in place. I am Alara, she said softly, her voice a lamentation that dripped with sorrow. A guardian of forgotten souls. Guardian? A bitter laugh escaped my lips, the sound ringing hollow within this crypt-like realm. You mean a warden trapping them in this torment? The corners of her mouth twisted, a shadow of something that might be sorrow. Their anguish empowers this place, feeds it, just as yours does. Her words slid into my psyche, and the memories surged, a flood of faces shrouded in neglect and despair, swarming to the forefront of my mind. I could almost hear their cries, the children who had reached out only for me to cast them aside. Each child a fragment of grief, each face a torch igniting the darkness further. Why are you showing me this? I demanded, all too aware of the tempest of souls encapsulating us, their collective sorrow replenishing the shadow as strength. Because you must understand what you've lost, Alara implored, her eyes boring into mine, relentless and unyielding. Only by acknowledging your pain can you hope to find freedom. With a flick of her ethereal wrist, the air shimmered, revealing a scene beyond the crumbling walls of this hellish prison, a field washed in sepia tones, underscored by low, mournful cries. In the center, a small figure wept, rocking back and forth, unprotected by the warmth of childhood. My chest tightened. No, not her. She waits for you, Alara whispered, her voice a haunting lullaby, drawing me toward the vision. But you must choose. Forsake your sins and save her, or remain anchored here, forever bound to your guilt. The specter began to fade away as the weight of choice settled upon my shoulders like lead. The child, the echo of my very soul, trembled in the vision, and the shadows around me writhed, hungry, eager to devour my decision. No, I won't let this happen, I shouted, desperation spilling from me like an open wound. But the darkness only roared back, leaping closer with a ferocity that bore down on my chest. Compressing my breath into little gasps, I felt myself being pulled into the vision, toward that heart-wrenching tableau of despair. As I reached out toward the child, the unearthly laughter erupted again, echoing down the corridors of despair. You cannot escape your fate. The ground beneath me trembled, shaking violently in rebellion against my choice. I could see the child's eyes widen, lost and terrified, and just as I felt my fingertips brush the light, the walls of the passage began to close in, the stone vibrating with an insatiable hunger, threatening to crush me completely. No, I screamed, pain slicing through me as I was torn between two realms, the light and the abyss. With a final, bone-chilling creak, the ceiling above me shattered, and the darkness unleashed its full fury. The echoes of laughter and sobbing converged, spiraling into a vortex that swallowed even my scream. As everything imploded around me, I felt myself ripped asunder, cast into the depths of nothingness once again, the echo of a child's voice resounding in the dark. Remember, and then, a chilling silence fell. When the silence broke, it felt as if a heavy door had swung open in the recesses of my mind, letting in an icy wind that froze the remnants of my spirit. I opened my eyes once more, not to the familiar confines of the passageway, but to an expanse of darkness so deep it swallowed all light. My breaths came in shallow gasps, the air thick and suffocating, each exhale laced with the taste of iron. I was not alone. The unnerving sensation of watchful eyes crawled over my skin, prickling with anticipation. Slowly, I turned my head, scanning the dim void around me, searching for what lingered just beyond the reach of my tired vision. The whispers began anew, soft at first, weaving through the shadows like silk, curling around me as they grew louder, more insistent. Come play with us, join us, please don't leave us. The voices were a chorus of children, their innocent tones twisted in an echo of torment that sent shivers down my spine. It was as if they were trapped in the very walls of my doubts, their souls ensnared by the darkness that thrummed with malicious energy. My heart pounded against my ribcage, desperate to escape the hammering rhythm of despair. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" I shouted into the void, hating the tremor in my voice, the hint of pleading that lingered there. The laughter in response was not jovial. It was cruel, a sound that hinted at unfathomable knowledge and unfurling sorrow. "Don't you remember?" The chorus swirled tighter, pressing in around me as if the shadows were curving into grotesque figures, shapes dancing on the periphery of my vision. "You've forgotten, and now we're forgotten. Help us." A shudder coursed through me. Their calls stirred memories that clawed at the edges of my consciousness, desperate to break free from the prison I had built around them. I remembered brighter days, and laughter that had once filled my home, but soon the echoes of silence returned, draping over everything like a shroud. The overwhelming emptiness was more suffocating than the weight of their plea. I took a step forward, spine tingling as the ground shifted beneath my feet, the terrain morphing into a path strewn with fallen leaves. They crunched gruesomely beneath my weight, blending with the whispers that clawed at my sanity. The darkness wavered ahead, shaping into silhouettes of trees whose twisted branches clawed at the sky. An ethereal light flickered in the distance against my will, an effort to lead me farther into this heart of despair. As I moved toward it, shadows reached out with ravenous fingers, brushing against my skin, chilling me to the bone. "Don't trust her." A sharp whisper sliced through the quiet, startling me back to the present. "The child is not what you think. You embraced your sins. Now they'll embrace you." Shaking, I pressed onward, guilt surging through me like ice through my veins. Was the child real, or merely a mirage tailored to exploit my weaknesses? Conflicting emotions whirled in my mind, but the light became brighter, more insistent, and I felt as though I were being drawn into a whirlpool of fates. Suddenly, a form lunged from the shadows, bearing teeth so jagged they could rip through bone. A child, yet not a twisted visage of innocence hardened by the weight of suffering. "You must choose," she screamed, her voice layered with every anguish she had endured, the dichotomy of her existence thrusting itself upon me with the force of a tidal wave. "Please," I begged, energy draining from my limbs. "Help me understand. Time is running out, and with it, the past." The creature twisted with each syllable, widening my perception of reality. "You cannot abandon hope without facing what lies within. Save her or join them." The ground rumbled, the trees around me bending as if bowing to some unseen force, their leaves trembling like candle flames in a storm. I reached out, heart racing, the warmth of longing clashing against the cold truth of consequences. Just then, the shadows around the child morphed and spun, forming into anguished faces, mothers and fathers, friends and lovers, all screaming for release, all willing to drag me into their abyss to assuage their own despair. "No," I shouted, struggling against the pull of the past. "I want to be one of you." But as I turned to flee, the earth bucked beneath me, and the pathway began to collapse, folding in on itself. The specters of my failures screamed, swirling around me, reaching for me. They were everywhere, the cacophony of regret drowning out my sanity. Desperation clawed at my insides as I felt the ground drop beneath me. I was falling again, and this time it was not into darkness alone, but into the very essence of my remorse. Time slowed as I plummeted toward a rising maelstrom of torment, their cries melding into a singular wail piercing the fabric of my reality. As dread washed over me, I closed my eyes in resignation, expecting the end, that a powerful grip seized me mid-fall, yanking me upwards into the blinding light, a fleeting vision of the child I had once abandoned. Her face twisted with pain, yet pleading. As her lips formed silent words I could not decipher, I awoke suspended in the air above a vast expanse, swirling clouds of shadow threatening to pull me down into the abyss below, the shadows clawing at my feet. Fear gripped my heart as I realized I had not escaped. I had entered a more profound nightmare. The echoes of laughter morphed into a sinister undertone. "You will never be free," and beneath me, the darkness roared, ready to swallow me whole. The weight of despair pressed down on me like an anchor, dragging me deeper into the abyss. I blinked against the haze of shadows, swirling remnants of my past clawing at my spirit like accusations forgotten. Flashes of memory ignited against the dark. A flickering film projected against the innermost walls of my mind's spirits lost in torment. The echoes of laughter that once held the purity of childhood, now twisted into an unholy symphony. Each note turned to ash in my mouth as the reality of my choices surged back, suffocating me. Remember? The voice slithered through the shadows, its grip tightening around my throat. You were the one who turned away, the one who abandoned her. The child's face flashed in my mind, a desperate plea mirrored in her innocent eyes. Help me, she had cried. Yet I was reaching for my own damnation instead, ensnared by shadows whispering promises of release. I couldn't let her suffer any longer. I had to confront the truth. My betrayal ran deeper than I had ever acknowledged. As I hung suspended, the tumult around me shifted, the layers of darkness unraveling before my eyes. I focused on that flickering light, pushing against the tide that sought to claim me. Put her before yourself, the whispers clamored, and with each breath, I felt the warmth of my own sorrow. I wasn't alone within the storm. With newfound resolve, I summoned all my strength to pry open the memories like the pages of a long-forgotten diary. Her laughter danced around me, mingling with the old trees waiting to be freed from sorrowous rest, entreating me to listen to every haunted word they had to share. Save us, they chanted, a harrowing lullaby. I extended my hand towards the brightness, a determination blossoming within my heart. The ground rippled and trembled beneath me, opening further into a chasm of insidious faces. No, I cried out, the shadows bulking into grotesque formations. I won't let you take me. But the darkness rippled with glee, ecstatic for its opportunity to claim another victim. Its buoyancy grew heavier as the past clawed and twisted within me. Despairs intertwined, memories of losses intertwined with a desperate sense of betrayal. You accepted our curse. Now wear it as your shroud, the shadows hissed, laughing as they coiled tighter around me. Yet the child's voice rang clearly above the torment, an ethereal whisper rising within the chaos. Find me. I dove into the swirling tempest, pulling consciousness into my essence, feeling my molecules ripple as I soared. Each flash of memory became fuel to ignite my determination. With every scream and sob, the light grew clearer, brighter. The cries morphed into words, revealing the gateway I needed to seize. I remember, I declared, voice trembling but steady, piercing through the cacophony that threatened to drown me out. I remember my sins, and I won't be defined by them. Suddenly, the shadows bellowed, recoiling as if struck. A bell tolled, thick and heavy, reverberating through the depths. In that moment of reckoning, I felt my spirit splitting, breaking free from the fibers of dismay, with shards of light pushing against the dark. In a shriek of twisted faces, the shadows hurled their weight upon me, a cacophony born of malice connecting like strands of a web woven to capture lost souls forevermore. You cannot take back what has done. They howled, but I surged past, with the light illuminating the depths of despair. I can forgive myself, I screamed, each syllable echoing off the walls of this miserable cell. The dawning realization pulsed within me like a heartbeat conquering death itself, and clarity washed over my thoughts. Light became a beacon guiding my path. With every step toward that brilliance, I could sense the child beckoning me through waves of darkness, her features morphing until I saw in her eyes my own reflection. Before I could reach her, the shadows twisted, their claws gripping my ankles, pulling me down into the depths. The ground began to yield, revealing layers upon layers of memories, the lives untouched, the sorrow unbound. You can never leave, they howled in maddening unison, but resilience surged through me. I knew now each sin was merely misplaced truth, every echo a call for understanding. I am them, and they are me, I breathed, feeling the shadows writhe against the truth. I will not surrender. With a final push, I hurled myself toward the blinding light, fingers brushing against the child's outstretched hand, feeling warmth envelop me, erasing the decay of remnants. The shadows erupted, a malignant roar resonating through the air as my essence merged with the living pulse of the forest. A tremor rippled beneath me, shattering the well's mouth like a thunderous crack, revealing the gangrenous reality that lay beyond. I broke through, limbs unshackled, the weight of years of neglect lifting off my battered heart. But as I looked back, the well remained open, the pulsing darkness circling like a predator waiting for its next meal. I felt the shadows reaching up toward me, whispering sweet promises of despair. Beware, for in forgetting, you become one with the abyss again. The shadows murmured, a sinister truth lurking in their voices. I turned away, taking the hand of the child, my anchor between realms. The way ahead glimmered, filled with indeterminate hope, yet a shadow of doubt lingered, dancing just outside of sight, a muted reminder that darkness always waits, lurking in the edges of light. And in that moment, I understood. Rescuing others does not absolve the past that clings and haunts, but one must face the horror within, for it cannot be forgiven, only accepted. As I stepped into the light together with the child, I could feel the whispers rising one last time, their eternal echoes drawn. Just beneath the surface. We will meet again.